Hello, everybody. Thank you all for coming out today. This is official day 3 of Sundance. How many people, this is their first Sundance? Oh, wow. Excellent. Okay. My name is Jeff Abramson. I'm the Deputy Director of Bridge Entertainment Labs. We are an official Sundance Institute Associate Partner. And we are here to have a conversation that I think you all really want to have. That's why you're here today. Bridge Entertainment Labs is the entertainment consultancy for the national movement to rebuild social cohesion in this country. There are hundreds of organizations and foundations doing the groundwork to build unity. I've been coming to this festival for 33 years. I have been so impressed with how the movements that start here trickle up to the greater entertainment industry and ultimately to the greater public through the stories that we choose to make and share. And when I first met Stephen, who you'll be meeting in a second, I said to him, I need to bring you to Sundance Film Festival. If we're gonna build a movement in the zeitgeist within the industry of people who want to lead with curiosity and empathy, we need to start it here. Thank you all for participating in that word cloud at the beginning. It's really important that we can speak from our own personal experiences and truths and perspectives. We're gonna come back to that a little bit later. You know, for me, I came to this movement as a Minnesotan who has friends that have all sorts of different backgrounds. I'm a Libra, so I'm born to be harmonious. I also had the luxury, the pleasure of having a family who's here, my parents and my sisters, who who taught me to be a critical thinker and to question everything, much to the chagrin of my wife, but that's okay. And so I feel so lucky to be a part of this movement, and I feel very grateful to have you all here today. So I want to introduce our panelists. I'll start over here this time. We have Becca Curl, who is one of those people who leads an organization that is doing the very important groundwork. She's the executive director of Living Room Conversations. She's a recognized leader in the efforts to bridge divides nationwide. Through roles with the Bridging Movement Collaborative, Civic Collaboratory, and National Week of Conversation, she brings a unique perspective on how stories and dialogue fuel connection across communities. Sitting next to her is the first Jared. We have two Jareds. Jared Ian Goldman. He's the principal of Mighty Engine. It's a multi-award winning, he is a multi-award winning producer known for bold, character-driven film and TV, including this year's 2026 Sundance selection In the Blink of an Eye, which is debuting on Monday. I'm very excited to see this. It's directed by Andrew Stanton, and if you don't know who Andrew is, you do, because he is also the director, the creator of WALL-E, Finding Nemo, and Toy Story 5, which is going to be coming out soon, later this year, right? Also, Jared, this is his 7th film at the festival, and he also is responsible for Peacock's hit series Ponies, Emmy nominee Russian Doll, and Sundance titles including Ingrid Goes West, The Skeleton Twins, and The Whackness. Sitting next to Jared Ian Goldman is Jared Giese. I've had the pleasure of sitting down and having amazing conversations with Jared back in their homeland in St. Paul, Minnesota. Jared is the executive vice president of international at Angel Studios, where he leads global distribution strategy, partnerships, and theatrical expansion for one of the fastest growing independent studios in the world. Jared is known for building innovative distribution models rooted in listening deeply to audiences and creators alike. Personally, I'm a huge fan of a film called I Was a Stranger, which is still in theaters? Okay, so if you can't get into your film in the festival, maybe you can go down, is in Salt Lake right now? You can go down Salt Lake and see I Was a Stranger. It's a beautiful, beautiful film. And then it will be available, I imagine, on the Angel platform shortly after. Also, Sketch came out this past summer, which is an amazing film if you're like a Stranger Things fan, and also like values entertainment. It's just such a beautiful, beautiful film as well. And then Stephen Olakara. Stephen is the CEO of Bridge Entertainment Labs, the founding CEO. He has been, I told you what we do. He founded Future Caucus, which is the largest cross-partisan network of young elected leaders in the United States. He serves as a senior fellow at the USC Schwarzenegger Institute, and he is a Truman Scholar and a Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree. I just feel very, very grateful to have all of these people in my orbit, and now they are also in yours.
Thank you. All right. Give Jeff a round of applause. Not only for being the catalyst for this conversation to come together, and as you mentioned, having the vision to bring this storytelling conversation to Sundance, but he's known around here as the mayor of Sundance, given his 33 years, and everyone seems to know him here at Sundance, so I'm very grateful to be on this journey with Jeff. And thank you to Sundance for giving us a platform to have this conversation about how we can bridge some of these big divides in America through the power of storytelling. And to all of our panelists, thank you for taking the time. So we'll get, as Jeff mentioned, we'll get to that poll a little bit later. This is going to be a unique conversation because we're going to be talking, we'll be taking questions from you later, but we're also going to do a little bit of a group exercise. Bridge building is a muscle that needs to be exercised, and we hope to demonstrate that through this conversation. As Jeff referenced too, we are trying to build a storytelling movement that builds connection and curiosity across our lines of difference. We live in a time that feels very divided and very polarized. Let me ask all of you, just by a show of hands, how many of you feel like you've struggled to bridge a divide within your own family or friend circle? Okay, yeah, a lot of people. Now, a few people did not raise their hands, so I do hope to hear from you a little bit later on, too. But this is a very... This is a very difficult time, but I think we were having a great conversation in the green room. We hope to just bring that magic out here onto the panel, but we were talking about the power of storytelling to truly be an empathy machine. And we see that in so many cases, including some of the films represented on this panel. And so with that, I just want to pose an introductory question to each of our panelists. In our field, the bridge building world, we lean heavily on the power of lived experience to elevate our discourse and elevate conversations. And I'm so hoping each of you could talk about how your lived experience brought you to tell stories that create connection across humanity, or in the case of Becca, how your lived experience brought you to this whole bridge building world as a practitioner of bringing Americans together. So maybe I'll start with Jared 1 here.
For me, I mean, I'm not a storyteller myself. I feel like my job is to build platforms for storytellers to stand on so that these stories can connect us. I got involved with the arts about 20 years ago, and primarily with more faith-based filmmaking, and was able to do a lot of travel, and met my wife in this traveling music organization, and really travel just opened up our eyes to just the different ways that people live. And so when it came to looking to build the stories, building the distribution platforms that I've been involved in, it's just how do we create these platforms for artists to stand on?
Very good, excellent. And also Jared 1, but Jared Goldman.
It's a very hard question for me. I mean, I've only had 5 minutes or so to think about it, but I think if I'm being candid, right, my father died when I was 9, and growing up, I was always asking a lot of questions about, like, who was he? And I was hearing these different stories from different people, and hearing the different stories helped me at least create a narrative for myself that made me feel a little more whole. And I realized that these different stories I was hearing were leading me to just then ask other people questions about their own backgrounds. And then I just started having this awareness of like, it's so powerful when you could just be at dinner with a friend, right? And you start to tell a story and you feel them lean in, right? And I was like, that opportunity to create connection is so beautiful and fulfilling. And so I think over the course of my career, because I think the reason I got into the industry is different than why I'm now in the industry. I think I got into the industry. I started my career at Miramax, and it just seemed super fun and glamorous to be at a film company. And now none of that actually matters to me at all. It's all for me now just about the opportunity to create connection with people. So I think that's sort of the journey of why. I mean, I don't know if that answered the question. I feel like I just sort of monologued for a little bit, but I don't know. Is that a version of an answer?
Yes, very much so. Thank you. And Becca?
So I grew up in Maine in a small, tight-knit community, and my understanding of the world was really limited by the experiences and exposure that I had growing up. And so I assumed that since we were all from the same hometown, we basically had the same lived experiences. Like, we navigated the world in the same way, had the same opportunities. And fast forward a couple decades, and I moved to New York City to do the Teach for America program, and my understanding of the universe just exploded. Like, it just cracked wide open. And I think that shifted something inside of me to say there are universes of human experiences that I know nothing about. And so there's always been this internal drive to understand other people's stories, to expand my understanding of the world, to broaden who I consider as part of my community and who I'm willing to care for. And so that really led me to this work that I almost found on accident after, and in many ways this is my story, it's also a Utah story. So I moved to Provo 10 years ago and was working at the women's shelter. And during our training, we had all of this onboarding of the incidence rates and statistics around domestic violence in the state of Utah, and I was horrified. Like, 1 in 3 women will experience intimate partner violence in Utah, and that's higher than the national average. And I kept looking around and thinking, why aren't we freaking out about this? Why are we not talking about this? We need to be talking about this. And that led me to this really simple solution of engaging in dialogue. If we want to raise awareness about the issues we care about whatever your why aren't we freaking out about this is, then we need to have the kinds of conversations that center the stories of the community members who live here and that bring things from being a social issue to a community issue to an individual responsibility. And I've found bridge building work to be a really effective and fun and rewarding way to do that.
That's a good answer.
I think that bridge building work is so central to the creators who are here in Sundance, and I feel very connected to that story. I've known Becca for a number of years and her organization, Living Room Conversations, which is an OG in this field. I came to this work about 15 years ago in the bridge building world before I became a storyteller through my own experience growing up in Wisconsin. And do we have any Midwesterners here by chance? Okay, we got a few. All right. And you too, actually, Minnesota. And growing up in that experience, I was really drawn to music. And I played in all different kinds of bands. And particularly the spirit of jazz music really captivated me because jazz as an art form, whether or not you play instruments, is about a mindset of being fully present, of engaging in a true call and response with people, and co-creating new ideas in real time, which is improvisation. And when I saw how polarized our democracy, our discourse was, I was really trying to find a way to bring that spirit of jazz into our discourse. And so as a theme today, we'll be talking a lot about how we navigate our differences as Americans. And often there is a narrative that as you do that work and as you do those conversations, that you might have to give up a piece of yourself, or you find some kind of least common denominator. And I want to address that head on right now to say that I don't see it in that lens. I see it very much in the jazz lens that invites your full lived experience to the conversation, and that enhances the creativity of whatever type of ideas that you're discussing. And that truly is a call and response that meets on a new playing field as opposed to a least common denominator. So just as that frame, we at Bridge Entertainment Labs at Sundance, we're launching a new set of research-backed storytelling principles that brings together a lot of the best insights that we found as we work with storytellers, whether that's with studios or independent filmmakers, to add some elements that can provide additional nuance to their storytelling. And we sum it up in the 4 C's, and you can access the full storytelling principles through that QR code. So curiosity, complexity, contact, and good conflict. And just to share some examples of what we're talking about, with curiosity, we think that storytelling has an unparalleled ability to scale up a consciousness of curiosity, of modeling Americans being curious about people who are different than them. Or in the case of complexity, it's getting out of stereotypes and tropes, but actually instead listening for the nuances and complexity and the authenticity that represents our human experience. We like to say we want to be surprised by the experiences of our fellow Americans instead of boxing them into kind of these predictable spaces. Contact is all about combating what I call the division industrial complex, where we're told over and over again to fear our fellow Americans. Let's explode that. Let's get out of our bubbles, and so that's what Contact is all about. And good conflict really speaks to, of course, all types of stories have conflict in it, but we think that there's good conflict that's transformative, as opposed to dead-end conflict. Transformative conflict shows that there is a pathway, even if you're polar opposites, to building common understanding and evoking a spirit of shared humanity that shows some type of movement between people who are at odds with each other over the course of a story. So those are just a little bit of the kind of the spirit of our 4 C's. And again, we encourage you, especially if you're a storyteller. Who here identifies as a storyteller, by the way? Okay, great. To learn more about these. But I just say that also to tee up a conversation with our panel. First to Jared, Angel Jared.
Can I be Devil Jared?
Yes. Yes. We have a lot of yin and yang, I feel like, in this conversation. And but we were talking about I Was a Stranger, which is a film that Angel Studios put out, which I think speaks to a lot of these principles. And so I was just wondering, Jared, if you could kind of reflect back to the audience, one, what the film is about and why it was interesting to you and the guild members of Angel Studios, and how it speaks perhaps to some of these values of helping create connection and empathy.
Yeah, I Was a Stranger is a powerful film that created by Brant Anderson, still in theaters, just ending its run here. And I feel so honored to be a part of bringing this story to the world, but it really, especially in our time of division, it deals with questions about immigration and refugees, and it tells the story of Syrian refugees escaping to Greece. And it, I think, embodies what you just said about that films are a machine that create empathy. It's not a political film, I mean, the topic, I suppose, but it just is. Its whole goal is to humanize the refugee and to tell these stories and to see where they came from. And we did some testing on the title. The original title was called The Stranger's Case, based on a poem by Shakespeare, premiered at Berlinale last year, and won over 40 international film festivals. And so it's resonating with audiences, but it's interesting. The challenge is to get people to see it. To market a film like this has been an interesting journey. We changed the title to I Was a Stranger, to very purposefully try to help bridge some divides. I mean, a lot of films in Arabic, it's subtitled. It's not a film that you might think that would be more art house, but how do we pull it into broader audiences? And so I was a stranger, it comes from a passage from the Bible in Matthew where Jesus says, I was a stranger, and you visited me, and I was in prison, and you visited me, and I was naked and you clothed me, and it's not an overt faith movie. So I think sometimes Angel gets pigeonholed as being a faith studio, and so we're a values-based studio of which faith is a subset of those values. We're not ashamed of faith. We see faith as something that the majority of humanity is having some sort of faith experience. And so we think it's normal for that to be reflected in our stories. And the faith in this story is recognizing the humanity. And we see that's something that is just built into the story. And so we hope that as people go to this story, that they will just see the humanity in it. It's not a political film in that there's no policy recommendations. It's just trying to bring humanity back into the conversation.
Very well said. And as we talk about faith, we also talk about hope. And we were talking about different flavors of having an identification with faith in the green room. But for Devil Jared here, if you can share one, that theme of hope, but also in the context of In the Blink of an Eye, and tell us a little bit more about that film and how that might embody some of these principles.
Sure. But what's in seeing these four C's, the movie that came to mind that has a character who is curious and complex, and a movie that has contact and good conflict, and I don't think anybody thinks of it as a social impact movie, and it uses comedy as a Trojan horse, is Borat, right? And I was like, wow, that movie is just like, it allows for vulnerability and like humanizing people by using comedy. I was like, I gotta rewatch that movie. I was like, that just checks off all of these boxes. But look, Sacha Baron Cohen is obviously like so incredibly talented, and in thinking about Borat, just I don't know for the last minute or two, but it was like that movie, obviously like the power of that as like creating this safe space for us to be confronted with our own complexities and conflicts, and be able to see other people who we have our own preconceived notions of. I was like, wow, Borat, okay. Anyway, so sorry, that was a little tangent. So In the Blink of an Eye is it's three interweaving stories. The first one takes place 40,000 years ago, and it's about a Neanderthal family who are looking for community, and they come in contact with a Homo sapien community. The second story is about an anthropologist who's played by Rashida Jones, who is studying Neanderthals, and is so focused on her career that she doesn't see that one of her colleagues is smitten with her, who's played by Daveed Diggs, and she can have a whole life of happiness ahead of her if she can just sort of be present in her life. Together, though, they end up having a child who creates this technology that allows humans to live longer, and that leads to the third story, which takes place a few hundred years in the future, and is about an astronaut played by Kate McKinnon, who is hurtling through space on a spaceship with sentient AI looking for refuge for humanity. And where those stories all intersect is in the sort of emotional current that runs through, because what our Neanderthal ancestors felt and what we feel today, and what I'm sure we'll feel in the future, for instance, it's like when a child is born, the beauty and hope in that can carry through. But I think the movie then also asks us to think about legacies and how do you want to create a legacy for yourself? Is it through the stories you tell, through your gene pool, through your ethics, right? And so the movie allows for that sort of reflection through these three stories.
Very good. And you were mentioning that this was a blacklist script in terms of how they found it. Tell us a little bit more about that.
It was a blacklist script, but in 2016. So these things, they take a while. They could take a while. But it was so much fun to make it. I mean, at one point we built a spaceship, and but our Neanderthal, the actors who were playing the Neanderthals, had come in for a costume fitting, and so they walked onto the stage, and then we have Andrew took a video of the Neanderthals walking around the spaceship, and I gave it to Searchlight. I was like, you guys got to post this on social media. It's so funny. But there is something entertaining about something like that. But it also just speaks to the vastness of humanity. Also, in a sort of cheeky way, I did 23andMe and learned that I'm 2% Neanderthal, and I was like, we need better Neanderthal representation in film.
My understanding is I think we all have some percentage in us.
But I think that that's also what the movie asks us to scrutinize, which is that I think the Homo sapien narrative is that we just came and conquered the Neanderthals, right? But that's not actually what happened. We intermingled and moved forward together. And so, scrutinizing the stories we have been told to be well, why do I just take that for granted? Why do I just because someone said that to me, why do I just accept that?
Yes. Anyone planning to see the premiere on Monday in the blink of an eye? Awesome.
Thank you.
Very
for
good.
coming.
Excellent. And going to Becca, one thing that really got me into this whole storytelling world is because there are so many amazing stories of hope that are happening all across the country that I got to have access to, but wasn't really in the zeitgeist. When I would go home to Wisconsin and talk to my friends, they were not seeing the same hopeful things that I was seeing because they're being fed all this dark stuff from the media. And so I became really obsessed with this question of which stories are we choosing to tell? Which ones are we giving a platform to? And how do we tell those stories, especially as we reflect on this year being America's 250th birthday? What is the American story that we want to tell? What's the story of us? And you've also, Becca, had the privilege of accessing so many of these beautiful stories of us. And I'm curious what elements of those or the specific anecdotes of those that you think need to be more present in the world of storytelling?
Such a great question. I'll kind of approach it two different ways. The first is one of my roles within this Bridging Movement Collaborative is I help with place-based bridging. We convene people who are trying to do this work in their own communities. And one of the biggest capacity gaps that they have is storytelling. So if you sit down with these communities and you listen to how they've been able to break down stereotypes, create relationships, really unlikely friendships and alliances to get things done, they're all really inspiring. But translating that, we have the counterbalance to that is this really oppressive national narrative of division. Things are bleak. One of the statistics that I share when I speak to people is that 15% of Democrats, 15% of Republicans, 20% of Democrats say we'd be better off if large portions of the opposite political party just died. It's bleak, right? Where we think that we are is a really tough and bleak spot. And if there was some way by really skilled storytellers or other mechanisms where we could flip that narrative and get this injection of these really hopeful stories, it would make such a difference. And I'll share a really quick example of this that's actually not even US based, and you were talking about our birthday this year. But anyway, I went to DC and there was this group of community leaders and activists from Wales, Scotland, and Ireland who were being convened, and it was a exchange program with the embassies. And we went through some of these really bleak statistics. They were there to study political polarization so that they knew how to help their own communities. And we had a conversation on social identity. So we were answering questions like, what social groups form a part of your identity? Which ones have you chosen? Which ones have you been ascribed to? How does that affect your self-concept? And then when has being part of a certain social group been a benefit or a disadvantage for you? And most people talked about what it's like to navigate the world as a man or a woman, how your sexual orientation or your socioeconomic status can impact your life. And then 2 men spoke up and they talked about what it was like to be Protestant or Catholic as a child during the Troubles in Ireland. And they talked about the fear they experienced, how the cities they grew up in were carved into areas that were safe or unsafe, depending on their religion or ethnicity. And then they talked about how they feel the reverberations today, that depending on what your name is or the language you speak, it can impact your job prospects or your hesitance to start new relationships. And the participants from Scotland and Wales spoke up and said, I've never heard anyone talk about this. We studied it in school, but I've never heard a firsthand account. And they were just trying to grapple with how there were these effects that were there with people their same age that they were so distant from. So I think the power of bridging and getting on that, there's big S stories, right, that are in films that we all know about or we think we know or we know the events. And then there's those intimate moments where you're just face to face, soul to soul, talking to someone, and they're expressing vulnerability and authenticity and their willingness to just share their story with you in a way that feels like a gift. And it gives you the kind of hope that if everyone could do this, I think we could figure it out.
Those are powerful moments when you're face to face, soul to soul, and after being told and conditioned from so many sources that you're supposed to hate someone, and then you actually realize that you can connect on a deeper level. In every single case, there's some kind of, I don't know how to describe it exactly, it's like an energetic release. I see this like relief on people's faces, but also like some kind of rush of energy too. That is cool, and that is that needs to be spread into our zeitgeist. In our field, the storytelling work that we do with Bridge Entertainment Labs, there's this concept of vicarious contact, where yes, that experience you have in person, face to face, soul to soul, has that kind of energetic release. But the research shows you can also have that same type of experience through storytelling on screen. And that's why we feel the power of film and storytelling is so important, to be able to reach a level of scale that truly pierces into the zeitgeist. So now as we think about how we do that, we have a number of research partners that have helped to inform what type of stories of us we might want to tell. And we wanted to share a couple like very brief insights with all of you as storytellers. And this is just meant to add additional fodder to the conversation. So the first one here is with our partner, Todd Rose, who really introduced this idea of collective illusions. And part of his whole premise is that how divided we are is a collective illusion in a sense, and there often are differences in what we think privately versus what we think publicly. And this is just one example that he's talking about with the American dream, that most Americans believe the American dream is about personal fulfillment in terms of success of things that truly matter to them. But if you also ask those people, what do they think most people think the American dream is? They see it through economic terms, financial success. And so one opportunity I think we have to create new American stories of us is to dispel some of these types of collective illusions and speak to this common idea of the American dream that most people truly believe in. Another one is from our friends at an organization called Democracy 2076, and we partner with them on depictions of democracy in TV and film. One interesting takeaway from that is that actually most content we receive does have some type of relevance to government and politics, so it's getting out there for better or for worse. But the opportunity to tell stories of ordinary people who exercise power. Really does show evidence of giving people a sense that they have agency. A TV show on Apple Plus like Silo is a good example. Ted Lasso is another good example of that. And then finally, from our friends at More in Common that does a lot of research on depolarization, they've really helped us highlight the idea that we need to be telling more stories about people who are building things together in their communities. And their status, 69% of people would be interested in working to achieve a mutual goal that improves their community with someone across the aisle. So just to put a few additional ideas out there into the conversation, and going back to Jared Giese, Angel Jared, Angel Studio, some of you may already be familiar with this, but has a very innovative model that cuts through the gatekeeper model and essentially goes straight to people, the Angel Guild. And this collective of people, 2 million members, really become the decision makers in deciding which films get distribution and taken up. And I'm just curious if you can talk a little bit more about that, Jared, and also what you see that is different from what the gatekeepers are looking for versus what the people are looking for. I think some of these stats here speak to what the American public is hungry for in creating a new story of us. And I'm curious if you see any of that coming through with the guild members.
Yeah, I mean, our model is to give and invite people to participate in culture, to not just be passive consumers, but to actively vote. So the way our model works is anyone can become a member of the Angel Guild, and then every movie, every show that we distribute, whether we put it in theaters or on streaming, has to first be voted on and approved by the audience. And so I think one of the ways that I think about it is how do we move out of this metaphor of culture war and move into culture care? And that is, we have to see culture as the commons. It's something that we're all participating in. And so everyone, all the studios, everyone's trying to figure out what audiences want. And so our crazy idea is let's just ask them. I know, it's crazy.
Crazy.
And so there's not an algorithm there. It's literal people's voices. And so for storytellers, when you put your story into the Angel Guild for consideration, you get a dashboard and you'll get data in about 1 to 2 weeks, and you will see real-time comments from people. You'll see viewer retention curves. You know, we were talking about this transparency to empower storytellers to create this dialogue, this direct connection when you're still in the post-production final process, not just an after-the-fact kind of a thing, to help you go, am I on target? Am I missing? Is there a blind spot? And to look at the actual comments and interact with the audience. And so that's our hope, is that for us, yes, that's our green light mechanism, but we really want it to also be a tool for storytellers to hone and refine and to understand if they're resonating. And so we do think that the Guild is surfacing stories that, I mean, we've seen that already. I mean, I think with our second theatrical release a few years ago was a film called Sound of Freedom, and it was stuck. It was stuck in distribution for 6 or 7 years, and the filmmakers just didn't give up. And then, and everyone was told a film about human trafficking is not going to work. And so we saw that the data from the Guild said, actually, audiences are interested in this story. And so the movies that we put out, the selection, it might be, I'll have filmmakers come to us all the time and say, what are you looking for? And I always say, if I knew the answer to that, I wouldn't need an Angel Guild. And so for us, it is a kind of an eclectic mix of stories because people watch everything. And so we aren't coming at it ideologically. We're coming at it with curiosity to say, what are the stories that audiences are interested in? And I think we are seeing amazing diverse stories. And I think about I Was a Stranger and as being a proof of that. So yeah, there's a path. I think that's the thing, is that we're excited to work with filmmakers to say there is a path direct to the audience and a way to kind of bypass the gatekeeper model if we'll just have the courage to go straight to the audience. They will tell you.
Yeah. You were talking about how much this depolarization idea kind of stood out to you, and do you see any hope for kind of elevating that idea in the entertainment industry based on everything you've seen?
I hope. I'm hopeful. Yeah, when I first met Jeffrey and you guys and saw depolarization, it resonated with me that that's something that we know the story has the power to do that. But I think especially in the social media world, the algorithms that put us in our bubbles and prioritize outrage and polarization as their engine. To me, that's the challenging bridge, because that's where marketing happens. And so how do we tell depolarizing stories and still use those machines on the marketing side? And I think that's a challenge right now. And so I hope we're able to do that. And, can you tell a broad story still, or do you have to go polarize your storytelling to hit those bubbles? And I'm only selling my story to this audience versus that audience. And so I'm hopeful, and I love what you guys are about because of this depolarization, because I think we really need it.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, Jared Goldman, what do you think of that? Because you've said as part of your mission as a storyteller is to create empathy and connection, and you've been out there, and just curious how you'd respond.
Right before we came on, right, because we were talking about this word depolarization right before we came on, and I had a different reaction than I think some of my peers on here. I was like, I actually think this is a bad word, and I've been thinking about it as Jared was speaking, and I was like, why? And I was like, well, I think the problem with the word depolarization is there's nothing active about it. It doesn't tell you how to do that, right? And it's like, well, what is it we're actually trying to achieve when we are depolarizing? And I was like, well, you're allowing a space. You're trying to allow for vulnerability. And then I started thinking about vulnerability, right? And vulnerability is such an interesting word, because I think we can admire in other people when they allow for vulnerability, but individually we don't like to be seen as vulnerable. But I think vulnerability becomes sort of an engine for compassion. And so it's like, maybe that's the way. It's actually like trying to create opportunities for vulnerability. And I think what movies and TV shows do is create this sort of safe space for that, right? Because like people don't like being persuaded, but they do like being moved, and that comes with allowing yourself to be open to what these characters are going through, and allowing yourself to be open to that allows for vulnerability, and that actually allows for minds to be changed. I made a movie many years ago called. And that could happen on a quieter scale. Like I made a movie many years ago called Loving, about the Loving versus Virginia Supreme Court case. Thank you. And what was so interesting about making that movie is, the overt message is like, racism's bad. But the way we told that story was through very quiet, right? We just spend time with Richard and Mildred Loving, and you see like these are two people who they love each other, right? They just want to they want to just have an ordinary life and like just go about their day. They're not trying to like tear down, like society just because they are, a multiracial couple. And it was really interesting to have conversations with people afterwards and be like, well, what's the big deal? Like these people didn't do anything. Why did this need to go all the way up to the Supreme Court? And in 1967, no less. And I think like it becomes about vulnerability.
Yeah. Well, that vulnerability, that openness that you're talking about is very much a practice that Becca is very well versed in. And so we're going to move to a bit of a fun exercise that Becca's going to lead us through. So take it away.
All right. So I believe we shall see up on the screen here your contributions to this word cloud of what describes America right now. I'll call a couple of them out, although it seems to be pretty bleak right now. America is divided and lost. It's struggling. It's sad. It's under siege. America's in an open relationship. It's
You need to unpack that one.
unrecognizable. America is more than us. It's unrealized. It's an open conversation. America's gonna be okay. It's my home. It's a beacon. America had a good run. America's in distress. America's slipping. America's reinventing itself. America is an idea that can't perish. We have this spectrum of responses. We bring our whole selves, our backgrounds, what we learned from our families, the communities we grew up in. We bring them into something as simple or complex as a term like America. And so when we feel stuck in this division, or when we feel othered, or as if we may be othering and have a hard time relating to people, this is a great way to get you thinking about piquing your curiosity, right? Like, I never would have said some of these things, but once I heard them, I was like, oh. And I could sense some of you doing that, like with each new response. And so we're gonna do some practice on a very simple yet complex skill called listening. And one of the things that gets in our way with listening is we bring really bad habits to it. Some of those bad habits are trying to realign or correct what we heard to fit with what we want it to be. Or maybe you want to relate to someone by immediately adding your own experience, which then recenters you instead of the person that you're listening to. So we're gonna do our best to try a brief exercise around listening. You will be in pairs of 2, so you're gonna get to know your neighbor. And we will have you answer one of the following 2 questions. Either, when was a time you have felt misunderstood? Or, when have you changed your mind or stance on an issue? So you're gonna take a moment, you're gonna try and share from your experience. Here's a time I felt misunderstood, here's what was going on, here's a time I shifted my stance, and this is why it happened. The person who is listening is going to listen for feeling or meaning rather than the content. We try to convey a lot with language, and it's a pretty paltry tool at times. And when we get in trouble with listening, it's because we've locked onto one term or one word, or that word unlocks something in my brain, so now I know how I'm gonna enter the conversation. So you're gonna step back from all of that and just listen for feeling or meaning. So you'll have 2 minutes to share your experience, then the listener will have 1 minute to reflect back. Like, it sounded like when you were saying that, it was really frustrating. So try to empathize, try to understand what they were trying to convey, and then you'll switch roles. So it may get a little noisy in here, but do your best to listen to your conversation partner and really focus on what they're trying to express as they're answering these questions.
This is like Jeff's dream. He always wanted to do like an exercise like this at Sundance for 3 years, and now this is happening. I wonder where Jeff is. He needs to be. Yeah. Oh, there he is. Yeah, there he is. Look, he's smiling. He came to our launch conference in 2023. So it was our first Bell conference, which was at USC. And it was called Creating New American Stories of Us. So he came afterwards. Jeff, this is like your dream come true. He loves it. And yeah, he just followed up multiple times. It's like, I feel like my whole life is like led to this point. Yeah. To see if there's maybe a film there that we could combine with. Yeah. Mainly it's been Sundance.
Especially because that's tech. So we have a very tech approach to how we make things. So you guys are focused on American.
I think so. I mean, I'd love to go up to Canada as well, if there's something out there. But yeah, our mandate
Like your mission needs to be there, but I just see the need for it.
Okay, wrap up. Whoever's speaking should be wrapping up. And now the listener, go ahead and take a minute to reflect back what you understood.
We're talking about Paramount, for example, right now, which is all changing. And we are actually between, and it's kind of confidential, storytelling initiative right now. And so it's all these insights, our 4Cs, all that stuff is now like in this new initiative. And it's gone up the chain of command so much that now, there are a lot more cooks getting in the kitchen, which is actually a good thing, but it is kind of slowing it down a little bit. But we're excited about that, for example, as a way to scale our impact. We've made good progress with Disney, for example. I'm just curious what you
Okay, that was your minute to reflect back. Now change roles. So if you were listening, now you're the speaker, and choose one of the questions to answer.
seeding the idea with that.
I'm like trying to lock my legs and stop.
I hope our growing success will. I hope it's going to stop where they're listening to the audience. I'd love to see more audience voting and participation. You might get in and get access to the gatekeepers, but the next firing round, those guys are you've got to like start all over. Like it's not going, you kind of want it done year after year. And so many filmmakers have stories that they're like bringing it forward. They have a story that was started in 2016. You might have had an executive that was championing it, and then he got fired from the studio. The rights are stuck there. Now that story's dead. So and that happens all the time. Started off in conflict with the studio system. Disney and everybody sued us. Actors didn't want us to do it. Got sold off. Basically, instead of trying to clean it up or get it, you get that risk. Families and audiences. We just felt like studios were not telling stories about it. Rocky, here's the stories that you need, and families are like, you're disconnected from us, you're not connected to our lived experience, and you're just trying to tell us your ideology.
All right, that was your 2 minutes to answer the question. Now swap, and whoever was listening, please reflect back what you heard.
They are going to disconnect
All right. We're going to bring everyone's attention back to the front. And we have some microphones, and so I'm hoping to hear back from 2 or 3 people what you noticed during that exercise. So if you were trying to just listen and not interrupt, what did you notice when you were trying to listen? Or if you were speaking, what did you notice about trying to answer this question and know someone was just listening to you? So we'll go this side. I think there are some hands. Someone with a mic is gonna, so put your hands back up and they'll find you.
Okay, so my name is Jay, and this is Helen. When I was listening, what I noticed was that I loved the prompt of just listen. Don't try to find that entry point, or don't want to try to latch on to the one insight that you have that you're going to jump in with when you have a back and forth conversation. I did feel like it was difficult to turn that off. I noticed that I found myself thinking, oh, that's great. Okay, I have something to say about that. And oh, that reminds me of this other thing. Like, so let me store that away. And then I realized that as I was doing that, then I wasn't listening anymore. So there was that. And then when Helen was reflecting what I said, I noticed that it seemed like I noticed maybe a temptation on her part to not only reflect back what I had actually said, but to infer and guess. And maybe I think maybe that makes you feel X, which I hadn't said, but it was her attempt to understand by connecting the dots and going further than what I had said.
Yeah. It is amazing how hardwired we are, like our brains are, to react a specific way every time you're in conversation and every time you're trying to listen. Yeah, thanks for that. And I like the part about maybe intuiting, maybe something you were communicating that you didn't intend to communicate that she was picking up on because she was just sitting back in that listening role. Yeah, and then we had, I think, someone right there too.
So I noticed this at other panels, and I've run these before. The reason they are holding the mic is so that somebody doesn't grab the mic and monopolize it for like. Don't try to fight and grab the mic. My name's Joshua. I was speaking with Harry, and the thing that I noticed both when listening and when talking is that even though I was trying, my brain was already constructing a story around what the person was saying, and it was not Harry's story, it was my story about what Harry was telling me. And it was very evident when Harry reflected back at me. I was like, well, that's Harry seeing, that's how Harry is seeing me, and not necessarily like what I was trying to say, especially about like the misunderstoodness. And he picked up on, I think, the frustration about the story, but I don't think he picked up on like the anger and like the real like sense of threat that I felt in this. So it was really interesting that I was telling us, like you were telling the story, not what the other person was saying, but what was going on in my own head.
Yeah, and this is a little truncated because then what you could do after you heard Harry kind of reflect that to you is be like, you got this part right, here's what else I was trying to say. So it helps you as a speaker, you don't know what you're conveying, and there are things that you have that maybe you expressed and maybe you didn't express, so that one step further allows you to also say yes to this, but this is what I really wanted to say. And how often do we get the chance to do something like that when we're just in conversation with people? And maybe one comment from this side. Oh, right here in the front, thanks.
Oh, okay. I'm Sandy, this is Kenley, and what happened when we tried to do this exercise right in the beginning, we both stalled because I said, you go first, because I have to think about what I'm going to say, and he had to think, so we had a minute where we really didn't do anything, so our cadence got really off about time to switch, time to do other things, but I think we both learned from each other that if you can just sit and listen and then reflect, even in the reflecting back, then they have a chance to sort of go, oh yeah, that is how I felt, or not how I felt. But it was an interesting experiment about us not even knowing what to do about having that 2 minutes for someone else to listen.
And one of the things that can be so powerful about exercises like this, or tools like a living room conversation, is it disrupts all of these conversation norms and patterns and habits that you have, and allows you to have a different kind of conversation. Like, it's not normal for you to be timed while you're trying to like bare your soul about a time that you felt misunderstood, but it helps like hone and sharpen your focus in the conversation, so it can be a really nice practice to try and roll in, or even in your personal relationships to say, I'm working on listening, so I'm gonna sit back and I won't be talking as much, and I just wanna listen to what you have to say, to remind yourself and the speaker, and then you can do some of that reflecting back. So listening, I love the 4 C's and these sort of values and underlying skills in bridging divides. Another role that I have within the Bridging Movement Collaborative is training in skills. And so we worked with a group of over 60 practitioners to identify what are these core skills. One of them is listening, which inherently should involve curiosity and empathy. Then it's dialogue, a back and forth, and then it's some kind of collaboration, whether that's depolarization or collaborative problem solving. So you've done listening, you piqued your curiosity a little bit, and now we're gonna move into a curiosity exercise. Something that can be really frustrating when you think about curiosity, for me, it gets frustrating when someone says, don't judge other people. Just don't judge people. No, we shouldn't be judging people when our brains are designed to judge. Like, that's how we have survived as a species, is that we make quick judgments. And so what you can do is you can start to practice and exercise this muscle of replacing that judgment with curiosity. Acknowledge it, it's gonna show up, and then think of, how can I start to pique my curiosity? So on social media, which we mentioned before, which is not a great place for dialogue and authentic connection, and it's the things that look the most alarming that get the most traction. So something you could do instead of saying, I can't believe they just posted that, to say, I wonder why they posted it. So anytime you can just, a little bit of the curiosity, it's gonna put you in a different space. Of wonder, of wanting to connect and wanting to understand. So if we go to the next slide, this is a social media type statement, right? Or you could be in conversation with someone and they say this thing and you just get stuck on it. So I want right now to hear, what are your assumptions? What are your assumptions about whoever made this statement? And you can just call them out and I'll do my best. They're Republican, Black Panther. What was that? A hunter? American? NRA member, I think I heard. Constitutional rights. A man. From Texas. Rural. Okay, so there are all of these statements that came to mind, right? Now I'm gonna give you another quote and I want you to do the same thing. So guns are dangerous and nobody should ever own a handgun. I heard Ronald Reagan.
Canadian.
What was it? Oh, Canada. Okay. Coastal.
Washington, D.C.
D.C.
D.C. laws.
D.C. laws. Mom. Mm-hmm. Artist. Flower child. Okay. So this is a very real conversation that I had. And we walked into the conversation and it was a woman who said guns are dangerous and nobody should ever own a handgun. And she talked about how she grew up in a home with a lot of domestic violence. And her father would use a gun to threaten her and her mom and the kids. And she said, no one should ever own a handgun. There was another mental health professional who was in the conversation. He said, I've never owned a gun. I don't ever want to have a gun, but I had a client threaten me and my family, and this client was unstable. And I went out and I bought a gun, and I have it in my house now because I felt like I needed to protect my family. And then the other, I would never give up my guns quote was from a gentleman who said, rifles are handed down as family heirlooms. This is what we do. This is how we connect and bond as a family. We hunt together. It's a core part of our shared identity, and I would never give up my guns. And like, I could even see you just nodding. It was like, I had very little stance on guns. I've never actually touched a gun. It's never been a part of my life. But every story I heard, I was just nodding and saying, if that was me, I would feel the same way. Like, I totally understand where they're coming from. I may still vote differently, they may still vote differently, but I understood where they were coming from. So this next, we're gonna do 2 more quotes, and this time I want you to try, when you see it come up, think about how you could get beyond that initial statement and think about what questions you might ask. Like, how could you get curious about the statement? So we'll go, I voted for Trump because I'm excited for what he can do for America. So acknowledge your initial reaction, whatever it is, whatever assumptions that you're making, and then how could you move from that to a little bit of curiosity? So just sit with it. What are you excited about? Like, tell me more about that. You know, I would love to understand what that looks like, right?
The Democrats and Republicans not done for your community in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
Maybe they got you to that point.
Yeah, like tell me your backstory. How did you get here? Tell me about your community. Tell me what you care about and what you value. Like there are all these ways that you can get to the human behind the statement. And when you're sharing stories, it is infinitely more interesting than your opinions, which is hard for some of us to hear, right? Like when you can get to the story, I can sit there and listen to you. If you jumped on your soapbox to tell me all that you think about guns, I may be tapping out or like kind of listening or ready for my rebuttal. Last quote. My two biggest concerns are China and climate change. So acknowledge your assumptions and think about it for a minute.
What are your concerns?
Yeah, tell me about those concerns. Like, tell me more about China. What is it that concerns you about China? Or what do you think about climate change? Or how are you trying to mitigate it? Like, just all of these things where if you can there are three things that you can really focus on to build connection across any topic. One is, tell me your backstory. Like, what brings you to this? How did you arrive at this position, stance, idea? The second is, what does this look like in your life right now? How is it affecting you and your community? And then the third is, what are your hopes and concerns moving forward? Like, what's this future-facing thing? Those will all touch on personal experience, and they'll be much more interesting to listen to than some of the opinion things. So this is actually, both of these statements are from the same individual who is a conservative working within lobbying for climate and mitigating climate change. So again, right, people can surprise us when we can move beyond that initial judgment and engage some of that curiosity.
Yeah, and let's lean into that surprise. I think that's a beautiful part of, like, that's beautiful fodder for good stories. Let's give Becca a round of applause for that exercise, by the way. And also, I just need to say that I saw my colleague Jeff. I mean, he's had a vision for doing an exercise like this at Sundance for 3 years. And the amount of joy I saw on his face has completely made my day. So thank you all for participating in that. Let's go to some questions you have. Maybe we can start on this side. Yes.
My question is, how do you bridge a divide when one side of the story seems controlled? I'm from Minneapolis. We're hurting. I will say the positive story that's coming out of it is the community and the bridging of that, and the bridging to what we're feeling from everyone. But, you know, there was another person killed today. I don't know how to bridge that.
Yeah. Jeff, as a Minneapolis person, do you want to talk about that? He's been thinking a lot.
Wow, this is gonna be interesting because that's my sister. I'll talk from the back. I'll come up.
I think we're gonna have a family moment here.
It's been challenging not only for me now with Minneapolis, but also being Jewish over the past couple of years. Doing this work, I don't want to get emotional about it. So one of my best friends from growing up, we're ideologically different. He was the very first person I reached out to when things started happening in Minneapolis. He's still there. And he had some very pragmatic things to say after Renee Good was shot, for example. He's like, she had to understand that there's some risk involved in what she was doing. But it's not. There's risk. Because if people know that if they think that ICE is operating in a dangerous way, then if you're putting yourself there, and maybe that's maybe she wanted to put herself in that position. I'm not saying that what happened was okay. I'm not gonna, personally, I don't think it was. But I listened to what he was saying and took some stock of understanding. Like, another thing that I had real problem with is, the banging of pots and pans and things all night, overnight, trying to disrupt these people, the agents in their hotels, because I don't think that makes anybody safer. I just tried to look more nuanced. Like, there was some interesting, thank God, finally, on CNN, they had like a psychologist that came on talking about how people process things that they see. And that when you like latch on to one point of view on something, like literally like in a video, it's hard to switch the camera and see the other side of things. And I know we all tried to do that. But that's the thing that we have to do, is we just constantly have to switch the camera in these situations. It's very complicated. The thing that I've been telling everybody is I don't know. I told my family, like, I got to go home. I got to just see for myself. That's the only thing we could ever really do, is just like, there's a movie called Carousel that played here that Chris Pine starred in, and it was set in the Midwest. He's not from the Midwest. We asked him, how did you do that? And he said, I went there and I just started observing. I started paying attention to the crew who was local. Let's start there. We just are so quick to react, and it's understandable, especially when people feel threatened. And I'll say that when I joined this movement, one of the first people that I sat down with is a woman who works for an organization called Resetting the Table that does a lot of the similar work. They're actually born out of Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And she's trans. And I'm like, how do you do this work? And she grew up in, I believe, Louisiana, and she said, I've been doing it my whole life. And we have to do it. You got to fight for what you believe in, but you also need to see each other as human beings first and try to empathize. We often say, listen with curiosity and empathy, and speak from your own personal lived experience, not hearsay, not headlines. And sometimes that's the best we can do. I don't know. I was not expecting to talk.
I'm gonna jump in really quick too from a practitioner standpoint, and I'll note that there's a difference between high conflict and healthy or good conflict. And so an area like Minneapolis right now, that's a high conflict situation. Bridge building and dialogue and these sorts of things work better in a healthy conflict setting. There's a brilliant thinker, Danielle Allen, who's done a ton of different work, and she said, she was calling for a supermajority to strengthen our democracy. And she said, in order to be part of the supermajority, 3 things have to be in place: upholding the rule of law, a commitment to nonviolence, and radical inclusion of everyone. Outside of that, it's not bridging divides, it's de-escalation and de-radicalization. And those are different interventions. So if you're thinking about your own personal role, there are ways where you can be reaching out to people affected and saying, how are you I'm thinking about you. How are you doing right now? That's a way that you can be caring for people. But on this high conflict level, there are going to have to be other sorts of interventions from experts that is beyond, my individual capacity to make a difference in my community.
Yeah. Thank you. Well said. Okay, this side.
Any questions over here? Okay, we'll toss it back to that side.
Oh, sorry. Hi, I'm Helen. So, first of all, I have a movie script I'd like to talk to the 2 Jareds about offline. But, so I'm Palestinian American. My husband is Jewish and loves Israel. I am now a member of a synagogue, which I am shocked to say, because my family have been activists. And I find it difficult to figure out how to be visible. How to, like, the rabbi has challenged me to be visible because I'm the only Palestinian American in the synagogue. I did go to meet him before High Holidays this year because I said the synagogue cannot come out and say what's going on in Gaza is wrong. And I need an explanation of why I should show up for High Holidays. And I did it with curiosity. Initially, I was going to do it with demanding. And I did it with curiosity instead, and we had this amazing discussion. And then he challenged me back. But I don't know what it looks like to not be disrespectful in the synagogue, because these are people, or in the Jewish community, because they're there to worship in their faith. I'm not there to convert them to the cause. I'm there to support my husband as he is experiencing his spirituality in his community. But I'd like to show up a little more.
You want to take that?
Yeah, that's like a fascinating and very specific case. So part of the work that we do, we work with a lot of faith communities and interfaith communities, libraries, campuses, places where they can take this idea of how one of our universal needs is we all want to feel seen and heard, right? Like we want to be acknowledged. And so regardless of your political party, religion, anything else, like you want to be seen in your uniqueness. And so, I mean, there's a scenario where you could talk to the leadership and say, how can we do this? And it's not just a need I have, but maybe we all need to understand each other better. And you can implement some of these interventions. There are a lot of national organizations that work with faith communities specifically and other things where you can say, can we develop a practice of maybe what's the thing that we're avoiding talking about? What's the thing that we should be talking about? And try to incorporate something where you get the chance to tell your story. But that's a lot on you. That's a lot of responsibility on you to just make yourself seen, being the only person who, or feeling like extremely unique and individual in your community. But there are ways, you could even organize a dinner party with some members of the synagogue, have them come over and just share your story, answer some of these types of questions together.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about, Becca, just highlights another storytelling opportunity, because the research shows that when you feel seen, heard, and understood, your defenses go down, you become less rigid and reactive in your thinking. And that is a storytelling opportunity, because 2/3 of Americans believe that film and TV has the ability to help create those types of connections, yet only about 1/3 of us feel like our story is reflected on screen in TV and film. And so I do think we can close that gap. I think, go ahead.
I just wanted to make another comment about the, being the only one. Todd Rose, Collective Illusions, talks about sort of the very important but also very vulnerable role of being the only or the first, to break collective illusions, to sort of open the opportunity for example, in the congregation, that there probably are other people that feel very similar, but don't feel the permission. And that's one of the things that we're doing within the entertainment industry. There's a reason why entertainment media has received the elite label. There are a lot of people who still feel not seen and heard. And a lot of people in the entertainment industry come from these communities and tell us that if they have an accent, a Southern accent, they don't get treated the same way in the industry. If they come from a rural community, if they're a person of faith, I'm sure Jared has stories about what that's like, that they don't get treated the same way. And yet, the industry is made up with so many of these people. When we speak to them individually and privately, they are allies. The group think makes it very challenging. And so a big part of what we're doing at Bridge Entertainment Labs is creating that permission structure to have these conversations.
Great, thank you. One more, probably.
We've got one over here. Fine.
Okay, great.
I'll hold it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Julie Elizabeth Evans, and I'm a screenwriter and producer, and I live in Los Angeles. I'm originally from Arkansas, but I don't have an accent, and Louisiana, I'm from the South, but so it's been interesting when I'm having, I write a lot of stories about the South, naturally, and I've found, because I don't have an accent, actually, people, they will literally say, ask me, are you from the South? Or do you really know? Is this an accurate story? Is this accurate representation? Yada, yada. And I'm just wondering, there were moments in these meetings, in these generals where I was like, should I put on an accent? I don't know. Should I put on some kind of And different people have given me different pieces of advice, and it's literally like one way or the other. But I don't know. Do y'all have any thoughts on that?
That's fascinating, and I relate to that as a Wisconsinite with no Wisconsin accent. At least I don't think I do. Let me know. I would defer to our industry leaders and storytellers here, but I would just mention, I think from the conversations I've had in the industry, the reason why we have complexity as one of the 4 C's is because leaning into your unique experience and the uniqueness of you is the most compelling thing. And what you've just shared with us, I think, is a very compelling story, and I think it would be to anyone in the industry. But any additions?
Sure, I'd love to take this question. So I think it's probably an evolving answer, but I think in this moment, where we are all craving authenticity, you should just have the accent that feels natural to you. I think you putting on a Southern accent then feels inauthentic. So, you should just lean into however you feel like you should sound or what comes naturally to you. But I think lead with authenticity. I mean, we feel. I mean, I just feel like everything is so hyper polished and produced and choreographed within an inch of its life. And so meeting people who, what?
With AI and stuff.
AI is, but that's a whole other panel. But
But a good point.
But I think, as far as, from my point of view as a producer, I look for authenticity because that's what I want to feel.
I think, just to add to that, I think what you're getting at is how do I get permission to be seen? How do I get my story to be discovered? How do I get permission to tell the stories that I want to tell? What we're trying to do at Angel anyway with this guild model is to recognize the limitations of the gatekeeper model. And I don't think that we were talking a little bit about this earlier. The solution isn't just to finally become the gatekeeper. Or push your way in. There will always be the limitations of the gatekeeper system is because it's just one person's perspective. And I think the beauty of the technology and our ability to talk directly to audiences, the positive side of some of the tools of mass media and digital media now is that you can go find the audience. And I think some of it's letting go of, we were talking about with social media and TikTok and the analytics and the creators are getting the amount of data to find an audience for your stories. It's possible. And I think maybe it's a little bit of being authentic, of course, to help find that audience, but letting go of the idea that you have to find someone's permission so that you can tell your story.
Yeah, well said. Well, I think that is all the time we have, and I just want to say thank you. Today's been a dream come true. It really has. And that dream to create a culture in our country of curiosity and listening and empathy and connection is a counter-cultural movement. And we create culture through story, and I think that's why it was so important to have this type of conversation here at Sundance. And every time I feel like I'm in some kind of countercultural movement, I'm always grateful to have allies and people who build community around these ideas. And so for all of you to be a part of this, it truly means a lot. And thank you again to Jeff and our entire team and Sundance and to all of our panelists for believing in this mission and for bringing this countercultural movement to Sundance. Thank you all so much.
If I could just plug one thing for the last year, I've had the good fortune of getting to speak at corporations and foundations, and ends up being a lot of this conversation about on the foundation side, it's there's a message they're trying to get across. The corporation, they're trying to sell a product, but it always ends up being these wonderful conversations about openness and vulnerability and authenticity and feeling. And so I am always looking for more of those opportunities. It's a new thing for me, but the joy that is brought to my life was so unexpected. So if any of you work for a corporation or a foundation and need someone
Talk to Devil Jarrett.
Well, talk to Devil Jarrett.
Thank you. We're going to ask that you guys exit out that door, and if you want to speak to any of the panelists, if they're available, they'll meet you out there. We're going to do some picture stuff. Thank you.